So 9 months ago, the Drawfee'S show posted a video titled Turning Random Color Palettes into Characters. And some point in the video, they say that since they only did 3 out of 9, that the viewer can feel free to do the other 6 and finish the challenge. And of course, I decided to do that and then take as much time as it takes to have a baby to actually finish it. But it's here now, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I did. So I start each of these off by putting the palette in the corner of the canvas, and then I do a few little silhouettes of how I might lay the colors out, and I lay out a little silhouette and then I sketch over it, and then I do lines. Maybe I did lines when I started making this video. I don't do lines much anymore, but anyway, after either the lines or I have the sketch all cleaned up, then I move into color and do a shading pass with an overlay layer and some grays, and then it's done, and it doesn't take me all that long. And all of these for this video are going to fit that pattern. The last 2 don't have lines, but otherwise it'll be palette in the corner, sketching out how the colors are going to be laid out, or otherwise coming up with ideas, and then doing the actual drawing. Anyway, I decided that all of the characters for this video would be applicable to a fantasy world I've been writing off and on again. There isn't really a main story for that world. I just got really into the world building, and here we are now. Anyway, this is a waterborn, and a waterborn is a hybrid between a human and a naiad, or between a waterborn and a naiad, or a waterborn and a human, or 2 waterborns. Pretty much any ratio of human and naiad, especially if there's not a third thing mixed in, will result in a waterborn. And waterborns are mostly female, about 80% female, and like a lot of species, they are rather insular, though sometimes waterborn communities will mingle with naiad communities since they're so closely related. Similarly, humans are often inside waterborn communities as well. Waterborns with their insular communities tend to have kind of similar fashion. Specifically, I selected 40s, 50s era, and this waterborn I've drawn for you for this is pretty standard. They're usually pretty pale, and they usually have colorful hair, and she's dressed as one typically would, and of course she's a woman. And probably the only unique-ish feature I gave her is that she has curly hair when straight hair is a lot more common for waterborn, but it's not even that rare. It's like the odds of being a ginger for humans, you know? You've probably met multiple gingers in your life if you live in the US of A. It would be the same for waterborn, kind of, where you probably have seen 1 or 2 or several that have curly hair, but it is like statistically, technically kind of rare. For this second one, I saw the palette and I thought beach. And if you look at the palette, I think you'll definitely see exactly what I mean. And even though I had just drawn a waterborn for the first one, I decided to draw another waterborn. At least that's how I would classify her, and how she would be classified by the definition I just gave in the last drawing, where it's any ratio of human to naiad, though she, as you can perhaps tell by her skin being blue, and you'll later see that also has the water highlights. She's a lot higher of a percentage naiad than the last waterborn, who is more on the human side. As you can see, she's dressed in a kind of similar style, though I did make the ruffles try to look like the foam on the crest of a wave. Anyway, she's also barefoot, unlike the last one, which is a little more akin to naiads in my world. Most 100% naiads don't wear clothes at all, and they also are like not born from parents. They just kind of pop into existence when a spring or a river or something forms. But she has a naiad parent and probably a waterborn parent. Another big difference physically between her and a true naiad is that she has that blonde hair. My naiads, at least, don't have colored hair. They're kind of like 100% water, you know? I also didn't give her much character other than her pose is kind of sassy. At the time, I was like really early on in writing this fantasy world, so I was still figuring a lot of things out as I went, and so I kind of got distracted with writing and designing species in addition to the palette challenge, of course, and I kind of forgot to make them characters instead of just this is what waterborns look look like. I'll talk about that more later in the video when it's a little more relevant, and also when that starts to change, because it does change. I don't do that forever. But since I just edited the last portion of the voiceover and it's coming up quite a bit short for this segment, I am going to stare at the finished image of this waterborn and I'm going to come up with a story for her, or at least a basic personality. So as I mentioned, she's a lot more naiad than she is human, and she lives in one of those communities I mentioned earlier that's a mix of humans and naiads and waterborn. And she's a young adult, she's currently single, and she wants to be in a relationship, she thinks, but she doesn't want to be a mom really. She does like kids, she just isn't sure about the full-time commitment that being a parent is. You know what? I think she likes to sew her own clothes. I think she does. I think she likes to make clothes, and she only makes clothes for fun, ? I'm thinking that a lot of societies are right at the start of an industrial revolution for this world, and so it's still kind of at the point where making your own clothes just because that's the easiest way to get clothes is like pretty common. But she does enjoy it, and she'll keep doing it as the revolution progresses and people start buying clothes instead of making them and all of that. I think she's really cute. I like her. I'm really proud of how her water skin flesh came out. And I think her dress is pretty cute, though the film at the bottom could be a little better, but that's alright. But overall, like I said, I think she's super cute and I'm pretty proud of her. And on this one, for palette number 3, we're halfway through, and this is kind of where I started to notice I was having issues. I just didn't like the finished product much in the first place. I made him more humanoid than I think I wanted fire elementals to be. I think it was a lack of pushing myself out of my comfort zone. He's also the only one who got a background, and that was because I knew I didn't want fire elementals to wear clothes, and I also knew this was for a YouTube video, and I didn't think YouTube would appreciate me showing what's down there, so I made an environment to block what's down there. I also realized that I think subconsciously, for this drawing specifically, my brain kind of went to Grilby from Undertale, because I just realized that there are a lot of options in general for how to block junk environmentally, and I put him at a bar. In addition to not liking the drawing, I also started to notice that I was leaning a lot on the species instead of the character, and also the clothes problem does become relevant for the next one. I don't want to spoil the next one too much before it actually starts playing, but it was kind of a combination of realizing I was making species examples instead of characters, and also realizing that it's more difficult to hide that stuff without clothes. And so I have an interesting solution in the next one that I hope you like. And also I made a character instead of a species example. Now I want to draw a fire elemental again. I want to draw it the way I see the fire elementals in my head instead of just a guy with a flame head. Okay, also I don't think I had determined this at the time of making that drawing, but I think since naiads are like 99% women, I think that fire elementals should be 99% men. Thoughts on this? I think it's interesting. I don't have too much fire versus water stuff going on. I don't even know if they fully think of them as opposites in my world. I think circular elemental systems are a lot more interesting, where it's not like fire versus water and air versus earth. I think like rock, paper, scissors elements is more fun, like plants, fire, water. I think those are the 3 in my world, or at least how like they're thought of by the residents of that world, you know, because like rocks and air do still exist. On to the next one. Alright, so this is the 6th color palette, because Drawfee did palettes 4 and 5, so I didn't need to do them to complete their challenge, right? This one kind of combines 2 issues I've had. So number 1, the issue of nudity. Like many species in my fantasy world, this species usually goes nude, and this is especially problematic because all members of this species have breasts, and you know, hiding down there with the counter is one thing, and hiding down there with a counter and also up there with something else doesn't work very well. But I thought it actually aligned pretty well to give this design some more character if she wears clothes when typically her species doesn't wear clothes, right? And this species I remember a little bit more about for 2 reasons. Number 1, they're actually the reason I started making this fantasy world. Number 2, even though I lost the flash drive with most of the information on it, I did write a short story featuring this species that's like just on my computer. So they don't have a name yet. I've been calling them beasts as a working title. They are the closest equivalent to orcs that exist in my world. They're big and pretty violent and ruthless most of the time, but they don't have any sexual dimorphism. I don't remember if they all have the same gender though. Like, you know, they have all the same bits. Like I said, no sexual dimorphism, but I don't know if they all think of themselves as the same gender or not. I do know that in the short story I wrote, there were 2 characters that actually got like fully mentioned of this species, and they both used she, her pronouns. I don't know if that's a coincidence or how it works for all of them. I guess depending on if I find that flash drive or not, I might have to make that decision. Anyway, like I said, she's a little different from many of her species since she likes to wear clothes. She also doesn't live in like a clan of beasts. She lives in one of the big cities in this world that like are kind of, you know, melting pots for a bunch of different species. And despite me thinking about her a lot and giving her a lot of character, I still don't give her a name. That's something you should know about me. If you ever want me to make a character for you, it's probably not going to have a name. Not right away. I do have a bit of a naming scheme for beasts, but I haven't like translated it, I guess. In the equivalent to common, they're still called like the translation of what they would be called in their native language, because they're just kind of names based on their job or some characteristic about them. So maybe I won't translate them into their native language in order to give them names. Maybe I'll stick with it, because that's how I wrote the short story. So I feel like I should stick with that maybe at this point. Anyway, she's not just wearing clothes to like make humans and naiads and, you know, the other people around her comfortable. A lot of them don't wear clothes. Naiads don't wear clothes, like I mentioned. They wouldn't change that just from being inside a city. But she does it because she likes wearing clothes. She likes being fashionable. She also sews her own clothes. She's also pretty gossipy, but I imagine her friend group is pretty diverse. It would be mostly women, but besides the fact that it's mostly women, it would include, you know, naiads and humans and other species that I don't want to explain in this short video. So yeah, that's her. I was really proud of her at the time. Her hands aren't that great, so I'm a little less proud now. Her feet came out shockingly well, perhaps alarmingly well, suspiciously well. I don't know, I guess I just knew how to draw feet that day. I usually don't. But I do think that the outfit I picked for her is super cute. And I think it fits her character really well. And I think shoes are really uncomfortable, which is the reason I decided to make her barefoot. Not because of any foot stuff, I promise. You know, she's never worn shoes before, and I think they're really uncomfortable, and I think a lot of people feel the same way, so I just don't think she'd wear them. Sorry. Moving on to palette number 7. I saw those oranges, and I thought, that's a cat. That's just a freaking cat. And the green made me think of its eyes, and I was like, I don't know if eyes are enough. And I thought, well, it's a cat person, so I can give it some jewelry. So I did. I put on a couple of earrings and some bangles on its wrists and tails, and I think it's really cute. You haven't seen it yet, but this is where my style starts to shift. I don't do proper line art for this one. This is one that I just do a sketch for and I clean it up a bit. I didn't clean it up nearly as much as I do now, and I also usually don't sketch in black anymore. I think I mentioned that recently. I usually pick a dark color that's a little tiny bit desaturated and then I put it on multiply layer. I also use a different brush now. The brush I use is more like grainy and more accurate to a real life pencil, I suppose. I did keep the jewelry placement pretty much exactly as how I did it in the quick color placement sketch. I think this guy is cute. I'm actually really fond of the design, and the drawing isn't that bad. It's mostly just that I didn't clean up the sketch as much as I should have and would have liked to if I did it now. I guess kind of with art, you gotta look at it and not like it after a while, especially if you spend like 7 months making a video and then you're editing it after 7 months and you're looking at the time lapse again and you're like, oh my god, what the fuck was I doing? This is the last video of mine for a while that'll use relatively older footage compared to when I'll be editing it, so that problem will probably be relieved a bit as I get into videos where I draw all 4 pieces for the video and then immediately I'm recording the voiceovers and editing and stuff once the drawings are done. Well, we're almost there. There's only one more drawing left. Now we're on to the last time lapse, and as you can see at the beginning here, I am doing some ideating. I'm writing shit down to try to figure out what I want with the character. So I knew what I wanted my snake people to be like. I haven't decided what I'm gonna call them. I might just call them Naga because it's easy. And I wrote down some of their, I suppose, key traits, and then I wrote what might be the same and what might be different for this character. So as you can see, I decided that she would be kind of religious and motherly and adopting children of all species. Well, all species she can take care of, but she would help other species find homes that could take care of them properly. And I also had to design some religious iconography for her to wear, which I did. I'm pretty proud of the symbol I came up with. So far I've worked on one religion for this world. I do think it will be the most dominant religion, and that is the Chests of Blaze Pantheon is what I'm calling it so far. I realize more every time I work on it that it's relatively similar to Greek mythology. It's hard to not be influenced by Greek mythology, I feel like, because I have so many subconscious Greek mythology facts inside my brain. Like, it's called Chests of Blaze because they believe that people gained sentience because a god put fire inside their chests, which is way more similar to Greek mythology than I realized when I wrote it. I think I knew that in my brain. I think it was subconscious. Anyway, the image that she's wearing represents an important event in that religion where one of the gods was tied up. It kind of marked the start of civilized times and societies and stuff. I have so much information on this religion. I'm not gonna dump it on you though. But I will dump it on you later because there's definitely going to be me designing some of these gods in this religion in later videos. Anyway, she also doesn't have a name because I never name anything. I'm realizing. I want her to have a name. She deserves a name. I want to write little short stories about her. I like her a lot. I think she's cool. I think I should figure out more specifics about snake people, but also I can't find my fucking flash drive. It's okay. I will probably just start over because there's a lot of it inside my brain and in Discord messages of me info dumping. So I think I'm just going to start over for the time being because there wasn't that much written down